roll with, come on, let's bring out our Lieutenant Governor, Dan Forest.
Hey everybody, how y'all doing today? Good. It's a great day in North Carolina. It's a great day to be an American. This is a great opportunity too for me to be able to look out across this field. It's kind of like Old Home Week in a lot of ways, and see so many faces I haven't seen in a long time and say thank you. Thank you for what you did for so many of us that were running statewide and running in our districts. Without you, we wouldn't be where we are. And I like to tell every audience, a lot of people say to me all the time, they'll say, why should I get involved in politics? It doesn't matter what I think, my vote doesn't count anyway. And that is just absolutely not true. If you happen to follow my race at the end, you will remember that we won by about 7,000 votes in the end out of about 4.5 million. So every vote absolutely counts. They're all important. Thank you for what you do. And there is no such thing as an off election year, is there? No time to rest, no time to stop paying attention for even a minute. You stop paying attention and you realize that things happen that you don't like too much. So you have to be vigilant, you have to pay attention all the time. So thank y'all for what you do every single day, and just keep at it. I'm going to digress just a minute because I thought this was really cool. If you have your phones today, how many of you have looked at CNN's headlines today? Has anybody seen the CNN headlines today? Probably don't pay a lot of attention to CNN. I don't either. But somebody called me and said, you got to go to CNN and look at the headline. The headline on CNN right now, the very top story, is the architect of the government shutdown. The architect of the government shutdown. And you might think, oh, that's Ted Cruz, and there's a lot of stuff being talked about Ted Cruz. But this article is about Mark Meadows, our congressman out west, Mark Meadows, who is the architect of the government shutdown right here from North Carolina. Elections do have consequences, and y'all all went out all over the state touting your candidates, and Mark Meadows is one of them. And Mark Meadows replaced Heath Shuler out there in that district, and now he is the congressional liaison to the United Nations, appointed by the president, by the way, which is kind of ironic. And now he's going to try to shut down the government, and doing that, he's not trying to shut down the government, he's trying to defund Obamacare. So the purpose is defund Obamacare and you'll have your government shut down because we won't be able to afford to keep the government open and pay for Obamacare at the same time. I only digress to say, if you get an opportunity, write Mark Meadows a note and tell him thank you for the work that he's doing. He's doing a great job. He's one of those few people that gets elected and goes up there and actually does what he says he's going to do. He's a dear friend. He's probably one of the smartest men in Washington, and you're going to see great things out of him. So what's been going on in Raleigh? A lot of things been happening in Raleigh. A lot of misinformation out there about things going on. If you pay any attention to any stories in the media about what we're doing, stuff with Common Core and that sort of thing, every story is prefaced with Tea Party candidate, Tea Party favorite Dan Forest. That's how they title every message. So whatever you're doing out there, the media doesn't like a whole lot. I can tell you that. But there's a lot of good things that have been going on in Raleigh. You don't always hear all the stories, but we started off up there. So, as you know, the Lieutenant Governor is the President of the Senate, so I preside over the Senate, and I get to be there every day and listen to the debate and make sure everybody's playing by the rules. But we started off by saying no to the state exchange for Obamacare in North Carolina. We went on from there and said, you know what, our unemployment insurance is way out of line with the rest of the country. We have to get that in line and get that off the backs of our small businesses in North Carolina. So we said we can't expand unemployment insurance, we have to right size it. So that was the second piece of legislation that went through in North Carolina. We went on from there to say, you know what, there's a whole lot of legislation that still needs to be taken care of to make sure we're protecting women's rights in North Carolina. And so we wrote legislation to protect against abortion in our state. Several things happened that were noteworthy. One was saying that if you're going to provide an abortion in North Carolina, you have to live by the same ambulatory care rules that hospitals operate under in our state. So when the other side says this is all about women's right and women's health care, that's exactly what we did in North Carolina. We also said, you know what, if you're going to have an abortion in North Carolina, it's not going to be paid for out of exchange dollars or local dollars in our state. Also say that if you're going to have an abortion in North Carolina, that a medical doctor has to be present before that happens. A lot of good things happening in our state. We also passed legislation that said if you're going to go to the polls to vote, you have to show an ID to do that. Passed a lot of gun legislation this time around to make it easier for people to have the right to carry their guns in the places that they need to carry them. I go around the state and I do a lot of town halls and a lot of business roundtables, and a lady who happens to be a gun owner herself said, you know, I'm a business owner, and I'm a little worried about this legislation that's going to allow people to walk in my store where I sell beer and wine carrying their gun. And I said, why in the world are you worried about law-abiding citizens walking in your store carrying their gun? They've gone through the process to have their backgrounds checked, to make sure they're law-abiding citizens, to make sure everything they're doing is legal, to make sure they know how to carry that gun safely. Those people are there to protect you. The people you need to worry about are the ones that will walk in your store anyway that don't have the permit to do so. So passing legislation to make sure that your Second Amendment rights are protected here in our state. A lot of other stuff coming up that's going to still be going on. You know, we're talking about education a lot in North Carolina now. If you've been following the news, talk about Common Core. Yeah, how about Common Core? You know, I didn't set out to be the Common Core guy in North Carolina, but you know, we started doing some research, started looking into it, and started to realize that there's a lot of things, a lot of questions that we have, a lot of things that aren't answered. So we talked to the Bill Kobe, who heads the State Board of Education now, and I said, Mr. Kobe, I want to make sure that we put the Common Core discussion on the front end of every board agenda from here on out till we get our questions answered. And about the second meeting, I realized, you know what, we're just not going to be able to answer all these questions. And so I leaned over to Superintendent June Atkinson, who sits right next to me in the board meetings. I said, June, this just isn't working. We're not getting our questions answered. There's no way. I have way too many of them. She leaned over to me. She said, well, why don't you write your questions down? And so we went back and we wrote down 67 questions. We put those together, we compiled them, we sent them off to the Department of Public Instruction. And we got an immediate note back from Dr. Atkins that said, you need to send us 10,000 sheets of paper so we can answer your questions. So the next day we delivered 10,000 sheets of paper to her office. About 3 weeks later, we got a mountain of information back from them, about 40,000 sheets of paper. Came back to us, a thumb drive full of more information, a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of data all over the place, but not one single question was answered. Not one question. Sitting member of the State Board of Education, voting member, lieutenant governor of the state, and not one question answered by the bureaucracy in the Department of Public Instruction. I think that's shameful. I think it's absolutely shameful. So we continue to ask more questions. And we still haven't gotten any answers to those questions, but we continue to fight. And you know, a lot of this stuff is just real basic. We asked questions like, what about the cost for Common Core? And one of the answers we got back was, well, you know, the assessments or the tests at the end of the year are going to cost about $28 a student. Then the next month they were going to cost $26, then $24, and then they said, well, maybe we can get them for $17 a student. Well, the assessments are nothing. The assessments are really nothing in the whole picture of the cost. If you think about it, I'm going to wrap three things up. If you're not too familiar with Common Core, what's going on, I encourage you to learn a little bit more. But I'm going to wrap three things into one. Our questions were focused on things like cost, things like technology and the access to technology for our students, and the assessments. I'm going to put all three of those things, cost, technology, and assessments, in one little bucket and give you a little analogy. In order to abide by the rules of Common Core, which we accepted through a race to the top grant from the federal government, which was part of the stimulus money, we decided before the Common Core standards were even written that we were going to accept them 4 days ahead of time. Actually, the first time it was 6 months ahead of time, and then it was 4 days ahead of time. We said we're going to accept the Common Core state standards, and we had never seen them before. We did that because we got $400 million from the federal government. And they said, if you want that $400 million, you have to sign up for Common Core. And so we said, okay. We said that we will sign up for the Common Core state standards even though we haven't seen them, because they are rigorous and because they are internationally benchmarked. To this day, I haven't had anybody tell me what rigorous means, and I haven't had anybody tell me what internationally benchmarked means. In fact, they're not even internationally benchmarked at all. There's no such thing as internationally benchmarked at Common Core, but that's why we signed up. So in order to apply by the rules, to play by the rules of Common Core, you have to have an end-of-the-year assessment, just like we do now anyway, and it has to be an electronic assessment. Well, 85% of our state is rural North Carolina. Many of our schools are not connected to broadband connectivity. Many of them do not have devices for our students. And when the end of the year, this school year comes along, we're going to have 1.5 million devices in the hands of these students to be able to take these tests. I haven't had anybody tell me how much is this going to cost the state to do this. How much is this going to cost each county, all 100 counties, to implement this? How much is it going to cost each school to implement this technology solution? How many technology folks are we going to need in the schools to take care of the wireless networks, to take care of the firewalls, to make sure that our leases of these devices are taken care of, and to deal with the technology companies? We don't know. We don't have answers to this, but we're moving forward anyway because we decided to bite off the elephant all in one bite right here in North Carolina, to deliver Common Core to all of our students at one time. And I'm telling you, this issue is not an issue that is a Republican-only issue. It's not a Tea Party-only issue. It's not a conservative-only issue. I have people that are Democrats and liberals. I have people of all persuasions come to me and say, this is bad for one reason or another. I've had as many teachers come to me that are for it as I have that are against it. And most of the time the teachers are saying, we're not prepared. We haven't been trained appropriately. We don't have any textbooks. There are no new textbooks in North Carolina to deliver this curriculum. The textbooks are being written right now, and you better start paying attention to them because they're coming. But they're not in the hands of our teachers right now to deliver. So there's a lot of unanswered questions. We're going to keep fighting for it. We're going to keep making sure that you know what's going on in the state of North Carolina related to Common Core, whether that's about technology, whether that's about data collection, or whether it's about anything else. So we need your help to keep fighting the fight.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan.
I'm going to end with this. There's a lot of good people in Raleigh. A lot of good people fighting really hard in Raleigh to do what's right for you and what's right for this state. You may not know their names, you may not know the names of all your representatives and all your senators up there, but they're doing the right thing and they're fighting hard. And I encourage you to encourage them. It's a thankless job in many ways. They get up every day, and many of them leave their families behind, they leave their wives and their kids, and they go off to Raleigh to fight for what's right without ever being thanked. So I encourage you to say thank you to them, to pat them on the back and to walk through their doors, because this is your government. One of the great things about America is that our Constitution starts with we the people, not we the government. And so fight for what you believe in, keep doing what's right, keep protecting our Constitution, keep protecting our state, and we're going to turn America around one state at a time, and we're going to start right here in North Carolina. God bless you all, and God bless America.